Hi, I'm Larry Puckett, the DCC guy. Well, I guess you noticed from the introduction that we went over 25,000 subscribers here on the channel. And that was somewhere about last Sunday or Monday. I'm not exactly sure because I didn't stay up all night watching the statistics as they came in. So, thanks so much, guys, for the last couple of years, the support you've given me and helping me build the channel to, where we are at 25,000. But there's no reason not to keep it growing. So tell your friends, your neighbors, your cat, your dog, everybody, just sign them up, get them to subscribe to the DCC Guy channel here. So what I want to do today, though, is continue with our look at the ESP wireless system. And today we're going to look at the control panel that I've built, how all the different components fit together to make it work. And then once we've finished looking at the control panel, we'll go ahead and duck under the layout like we've been doing for the last few weeks. And hopefully I won't make any more dents in my skull. And we'll take a look under the layout at how I installed the receiver and did the rest of the wiring down there. And also a look at the switch machines and show you how I wired those, because it got a little complicated there having the accessory decoder bus and the power bus having to feed through each one of those switch machines so I could control individual tracks. Then after that, we will go ahead and do a demo and run a locomotive and see how it all works. Let's go ahead and take a look at how the control panel works and how I put it together. And for that, I'm going to tilt the camera down so you'll be able to see everything more clearly. Okay, so here is the completed control panel. And basically it is a frame, and I'll show you the frame, how that works here in a minute. But you can see it's just made out of 1x2 pine, 1.5 inches tall at this point. And I think it's somewhere around 9x12, something on that order, big enough to take this picture frame here. And so the dimensions were controlled by the picture frame. And then on the bottom of it, it's just a piece of plywood to form the bottom. And very simple, easy to knock together in your basement if you have some reasonable power tools to be able to cut dimensional lumber well. So that is fairly easy to lift. It's fairly lightweight, which is what you want for something that is going to be a portable panel. And it's not attached to the model railroad. Okay, so let's take a look at then how it works. Now, first of all, I used this, it's called a snap frame. And you can get these from Amazon.com. That's where I got this one. And it's designed for, an 8.5 by 11 picture. And basically, you can just pop it up like this to open it up, and it clips open, and lift out your picture or whatever it is you want to put in here. And it's made to mount on a wall, but you can mount it to the top of the box quite easily. And then you can see I've got the wires connected to all of my switches, my toggle switches here, to activate the transmitters and send commands to the receiver and control the actual turnouts and switch machines on the layout. Now let's take another look real quick at this. So you can see for each of the 9 tracks on the staging yard, I have a toggle switch to turn power on and off to that track. And it does that by also controlling the switch machine, the IP digital switch machine. And as I've explained throughout the process of building this staging yard, I'm running a single wire through the switch machine itself and switching power on and off to the track that way. And we'll take a closer look once we get under the layout. So I can turn each one of these on and off, and when this switch is thrown, it will control the switch machine and set the points for either the ladder or for that yard track, which is what we want in a staging yard. So all 9 of these are set up. And remember, this one down here is for the illuminator accessory decoder that I'm using to control power for track 9. Now this switch right here is an on-off switch so that I don't have to open the control panel every time I want to turn power on and off to the board. Just leave it turned on internally and then switch it on and off using that switch itself. Now, in the past, I've talked about and done videos on how I create control panels like this one, so I'm not going to go over this in any detail. Suffice it to say, I designed the layout in a graphics program on my computer, printed it out on a photo printer, and an inkjet printer that you probably own with photo paper will work fine for that. And then I just covered it with some Avery clear plastic adhesive protector. And you can get that at, Staples or any place that sells Avery products. So it's fairly straightforward. Then it's attached to a piece of hardboard. I think it's 1/8 inch hardboard. And then it's just attached to that hardboard panel using 3M spray adhesive. So let's look inside now, and I'll try to explain that in more detail. So you can see here, this is that battery that I showed you the other day. And I took the output from the battery and ran it through this toggle switch that controls power that I showed you, and then runs that into the first of the transmitters in line. And then after that, and let me see if I can tilt this to show you, you can see at the very bottom there's a red and a black wire that goes between the first and the second of the transmitters. So all you have to do is daisy chain the power connections between these. So on each one of the transmitters, power goes out and goes to the next one in line and goes in there and then goes out here over to this one, and that's it for all 3 of these transmitters. So you could have a number of these all connected in line wherever you need and however many you need. And I just have these turned on, and again, a simple on-off connection. You can see the power is on now. The little red LEDs have lit up. Hopefully you can see that. I'm assuming you can. Okay, so I'm going to turn that back off while I'm messing around in here. And then for each one of these controls here, the requisite toggle switch is just connected to the input terminals, these little screw terminals that I showed you the other day, and how they're connected to the individual transmitters. So that's all it is. It's a very simple, straightforward plug-and-play system. You put power into it, daisy chain the power to all the ones in line, and you're ready to go once it's been programmed, as I showed you in last week's video. Now, the main thing is getting all these wires in here. And if I ever need to do any work on the control panel, of course, I can just disconnect these terminals, unplug the whole system, and work on it separately. Very straightforward, easy to do. Now, these come with screws. The transmitter panels come with screws so that you can screw them to the baseboard. However, because the baseboard is not very thick, I decided not to use that route. I went with industrial strength Velcro. And I just took a little patch of Velcro and attached it to the bottom of each one of these transmitters and also to the bottom of the battery. And that holds everything firmly in place, and yet it still makes it easily removable. And it's not like this is going to be turned upside down and shaken and things like that, so it doesn't need to be screwed down really. The industrial strength Velcro will do the job for it. So let me show you how I can close this, get everything back in here. It's sort of like pushing spaghetti or herding cats, and then you just close it and you're done. So it's very easy, makes it easily accessible, and yet it's a firm mounting system for the control panel itself. Now there is one thing that I still need to work on that I haven't had time to address, and that is when I put the toggles in, they came out backwards. The way I want it to work is when the switches, the toggles are thrown down, then it will activate the ladder track, and when I throw it this way up, it will throw the switch for the track that is indicated and power that track up. Right now it's the reverse of that. So in this position, it's all off, basically, except for this one, which did come out correct. So that's something I still have to address, and there's two different ways I could do that. One way would be to loosen the little hex nut here and just rotate the toggles 180 degrees. Or there is a software method where I can program the IP digital switch machines to reverse their normal direction of travel, and that should fix the problem that way too, and save me having to play games with these toggle switches. Okay, so that gives you an idea of how this is put together, and straightforward how it works. We'll go ahead in a few minutes and I'll give you a demonstration of that. But for right now, let's dive here under the layout and take a look at the wiring and how everything is done down there. Okay, here we are underneath of the layout, and for this I'm going to have to handhold this camera, so it's not going to be the steadiest thing in the world. But basically I can't get a tripod down in here to support this. So what we have here, this is the ESPR receiver that I showed you previously. You can see the power feeds come in from the DCC command station and then go out to this accessory bus. And this is the 1.5 amp accessory bus that the ESP receiver creates. And then that is going to go out and it's going to feed power to the IP digital switch machines and also allow me to control those IP digital switch machines. Now, behind it, you'll see there is an additional second bus. Now, that is the track power bus. So what I've done here is I've created just basically split the power bus. This is the main power bus that comes directly from the command station. And then I've split it here, and we have the power bus separate going out to the individual switch machines and to the tracks. And we'll look at those connections in a minute. And then we have the other power bus here that feeds into the ESP receiver. So the commands from the control panel, from the transmitter, are going to be received by this board. And then it's going to feed out those commands through the accessory power bus and right on up to the individual switch machines. So one thing that's important to understand is that for a layout, you only need one of the ESP receivers. That is all you need, okay? That creates your accessory power bus so that you can control all of your turnouts and accessory decoders that are on that power bus. And then you have the separate bus for your track power. Okay. I described that, I think, in quite a bit of detail in the previous video where I looked at all these components and the like and how they worked. So basically then you only need one ESP receiver on your entire layout as long as you have only one accessory bus to power and control. And that's all you need, because with 1.5 amps, these most of these switch machines and accessory decoders have very minimal power consumption. So, you know, if you're down at about 20 to 40 milliamps, which is what most of these operate at, you are looking at, you know, something on the order of as many as 50 decoders or 50 switch machines before you're getting up even close to an amp. And this thing can put out 1.5 amps. And I am powering this off of my 8 amp DCS 240 command station. So I've got plenty of extra power in this case. Now, I did want to mention that I ran into one issue with the DCS 240 command station. The ESP system has been tested with Bachmann, it's been tested with Hornby, Roco, NCE, and even some of the Digitrax systems, the early ones, and it works fine. You can use, with those, you can use handheld throttle commands, and they are sent through the device and onto the accessories, the accessory decoders on your layout, and you can control those. However, one thing we have found is that with the later current production Digitrax command stations And that includes also the DCS 200 that has now been discontinued, but more importantly, the DCS 210 and 240. There is something odd about the DCC signal created by those command stations, and the ESP receiver ignores those commands and only sends out its own accessory decoder commands. I have tested this with my own NCE SP5. I've tested it with a Digitrax Zephyr, and I had no problems at all throwing the individual switches here in the staging yard using my handheld throttle. The system works fine as a standalone accessory decoder controller, and it works fine with the vast majority of other DCC systems. I'm going to move up the ladder to the position where I can go ahead and use my camera on a tripod. Here we are looking at switch number 508 in the sequence on the ladder, and this is the one close to the aisle, so it's easy to work with. But basically, you can see here, this is my accessory bus coming directly from the ESP receiver. So it's going to provide power and commands to the IP digital switch machine. And that will allow me to issue commands and throw this switch machine, which controls this set of points right here behind it, and this track number 8. That's why it's 508. This is the main power bus for the track power. And I've got a wire here that feeds in and goes to the rail back over here to provide power for that section of the track. And then I have this wire here that's coming off of it, spliced into it, that goes into the second switch here built into the IP digital switch machine. And then another wire that comes out next to it that goes down and off to the track that I want to selectively power. So that when I turn this switch machine on and throw it for that track, then power is selectively routed through this wire to that rail, turning power on. When I turn the switch machine off, then it routes the points back to the yard ladder and turns power off to track number 8. And that's the same for each one of these switch machines. So it's a very straightforward wiring system, and it allows me to use accessory decoder power to control the switch machine and route track power through the second switch that is built into it, and route power out to a track feed here. And I went through all this in the wiring when I was doing all the wiring connections, so hopefully that's fairly straightforward. Okay, let's go ahead and move on up here, and I'll remind you about the NCE illuminator that we've looked at before, and I've got this red LED on it to show when it's on and off. So I've got my control panel here. I'm going to turn power on so I can throw switches. And then, get this far enough out, I'm going to throw the switch for track 9. And the LED came on, and that locomotive should have power now. So let's check it out. So I'll bring it on down here, and you can see it has come to life. So I can sit here with my portable control panel and turn power off and back on to that particular track. You can hear the locomotive start up in the background as a result. And right now, all of my toggles are thrown to activate the yard ladder. So let's go ahead and we'll make some movements down the yard ladder and then come back up here. We'll maybe go into another track using this. And I'm just holding this with a single hand. So, you know, it's that light, easy, and portable. So let's go ahead and see how this works going down the yard. I think, yeah, it's set for forward, so we can go ahead. So I've got all of the switch machines set for the ladder using the control panel sitting here in my lap, and we can just run trains right on down through here. And I'm going to stop. I'm going to throw the switch for track 8. And we'll run the locomotive back up into track number 8. And as soon as we get in there, I'm going to throw power the other direction. And power is removed from that track and the locomotive shuts down. So it's not going to be sitting there idling away, wasting your power from your DCC power bus and overtaxing the decoder by droning on for hours at a time when it's not in use. And this works for each one of the tracks in the background here. Well, that's a wrap for today's video. I think that pretty well wraps up the staging yard as a subject that we're going to be looking at. There might be some things that come up in the future that I will want to go back and address, particularly if you ask questions in the comment that I need to cover. But for now, that pretty well wraps up this series of videos on building the staging yard here on the Piedmont Southern. So have a great week, and we'll see you here next week with another video from the DCC guy. Bye now. Hit that little red subscribe button, and when the little bell comes up, click on it and click all. Thanks now.